Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. This channel is an organic amalgamation for searching, seeking, and finding the truth in this chaotic, confusing, and disruptive world we live in. And I got a story for you that I was researching, and there was an interview that was done by a guy who was part of the Community Development Administration, where the St. Louis Public Radio and the St. Louis American did an interview with a guy, I may mess his name up, but it's Nahul Pfeiffer. And he talks and gives a compelling account and wanted to set the record straight on where is the money, the recovery money from the May 16th, 2025 tornado devastation that just destroyed North City. And what are the recovery efforts? We haven't seen much of anything being done. There's been a few demolitions of abandoned and vacant homes and buildings, but there has been no buildup. And where is the money for recovery? And so I want to get into that story. And for those out of St. Louis, we need to have an awakening, and we need to call on City Hall, the mayor's office, and the mayor to practice what you preach. Just don't speak it. Actually give us some real action in this recovery effort. It makes you also wonder with Cara Spencer, Mayor Cara Spencer, if this happened in South St. Louis or South City where she lives, would the recovery effort have been exacerbated and moved forward in a rapid pace? So this story is all about St. Louis City Mayor Cara Spencer and her administration and how they have sidelined proven recovery programs after the tornado. So less than a month after Mayor Cara Spencer took office in April 2025, an EF3 tornado tore a path of destruction through St. Louis, delivering the most severe damage to historically disinvested and majority Black North St. Louis. 5 people were killed and thousands of buildings were damaged. This story ultimately centers on a painful irony. The city had functioning experience programs in place. Listen to this clearly. But the new mayor, Cara Spencer, and her administration chose to build parallel infrastructure instead of scaling what already existed, costing residents months of desperately needed aid in one of St. Louis' most vulnerable communities, North St. Louis specifically. 9 months after the May 16, 2025 tornado, tarps still covered roofs and building damage still remains a constant reminder of that disaster last year. City leaders acknowledged the slow pace, revealing that while $13 million was available for repairs and $270 million for demolition, actually distributing those funds has been a major hurdle. At a community meeting recently, Mayor Spencer's administration chief recovery officer, Julian Nix, was met with light applause when he acknowledged the central question was simply, where is the money to rebuild North City, North St. Louis? So in part of the investigation, the St. Louis Public Radio published a major investigative series examining how decisions inside City Hall, not just failures at the federal level, slowed the recovery for St. Louis, North St. Louis. Tornado sirens failed to sound as a storm bore down on the city. As Mayor Cara Spencer acknowledged, the scale of the disaster was enormous, and the city found itself navigating an ever-changing FEMA while ramping up existing programs and building new ones proved painstakingly slow. So slow spending and program failures. The spending delays were well documented. Nearly 6 months after the tornado, the city had spent only $4 million of the Rams settlement funds on recovery, even as city officials estimated total recovery costs could run between $1 to $2 billion. Residents at town hall meetings called the Rams settlement money the people's money and demanded faster action. Many programs the city launched or adapted for tornado recovery struggled to take applications and denied hundreds of applicants. Some launched so late that many residents had already turned elsewhere for help or they gave up. The city's rental assistance program for impacted tenants didn't begin accepting applications until November of 2025. That's 6 months after the tornado storm. So what was the federal pressure and minority contracts? The situation was further complicated by the Trump administration. Mayor Cara Spencer paused the city's minority and women-owned business enterprise program, citing federal pressure, noting that being out of compliance could jeopardize tornado recovery funding. She said she was treading the needle to protect the community and maximize federal aid, though she acknowledged she was being scrutinized for appearing to capitulate to the Trump administration's demands. The bottom line, this story is essentially a clash between the mayor's narrative that federal dysfunction and an unprecedented disaster caused unavoidable delays, and critics who say the Cara Spencer administration sidelined working programs, made poor organizational decisions, and failed to move urgently enough to help predominantly Black North St. Louis neighborhoods that were already struggling before the tornado hit on May 16th, 2025. And so, as I said, the St. Louis American and the St. Louis Public Radio did an outstanding job by interviewing this guy named Nahu Pfeiffer. If I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sorry. So the St. Louis Public Radio published an investigation documenting how decisions at City Hall slowed tornado recovery. And so this guy worked for the Community Development Administration for 3 years. The mayor's response included pointed criticism of she's pointing the finger at the city's Community Development Administration on the slow, watered down, and pull for these funds to rebuild North St. Louis. So she made a criticism of the city's Development Administration, a department that this Pfeiffer guy led from September 2022 to November 2025. He said, I feel compelled to set the record straight because the people of St. Louis deserve an accurate accounting of what happened. Remember, this article is in the St. Louis American. Mayor Cara Spencer told St. Louis Public Radio that the vast majority of funds that they had awarded many years before to CDA, the Community Development Administration, was still unspent when she took office, and that the CDA was clearly incapable of getting funds effectively out the door. And this gentleman that worked for the Community Development Administration said both of those statements are a lie and false. CDA, Community Development Administration, was charged with administering 189, follow the money, follow the story. CDA was charged with administering $189 million in ARPA funds. Before he left, he explained to the Board of Aldermen that less than 25% of $43 million remained in city accounts. They got some money. The rest has been spent, $94 million, or advanced to nonprofit partners, $52 million. The suggestion that his team, the Community Development Administration, was incapable is essentially offensive. He said, our analysis, planners, accountants, engineers, attorneys, and program managers manage the largest allocation of federal funds. CDA's federal expenditures grew from $24 million in 2022 to $58 million in 2024. Claims about home repair funds are similarly inaccurate. CDA leveraged a $15 million ARPA appropriation, all committed and more than 80% spent when he left the CDA. And it went to repair more than 1,000 homes and roughly triple their home repair program. In 2025 alone, according to figures released by the Mayor Spencer's administration's new CDA leadership, CDA's home repair program completed work on 499 homes. The Office of Recovery, by the city's own dashboard, this under Cara Spencer, had completed work on just 23 homes. St. Louis was already in a housing crisis before the tornado. Development agencies had spent years expanding home repair and housing production programs while creating rental assistance, down payment assistance, and stabilization programs. After the tornado, he repeatedly urged Mayor Spencer's office to scale existing programs already in existence to meet the extraordinary need. Instead, what Mayor Cara Spencer and her administration did, they spent months hiring consultants, including McKinsey, Ernst & Young, Deployed Resources, Tetra Tech, SLS, and Kia Point to build an Office of Recovery that duplicated existing city programs and capacity. She repeated the same thing that was already there. And we wonder why this administration is so dysfunctional in St. Louis and they cannot get it straight and right. And the people in North St. Louis are suffering each and every day. It was already a dilapidated, derelict area in our city. And now, after the tornado, it's made it even worse. And Cara Spencer, Mayor Cara Spencer, likes to finger point. She likes to use word salad. She likes to, what I call, throw rocks from the fence. And that was fine and dandy when you were on the board of aldermen. But now all the fingers are pointed at you now that you're the mayor of St. Louis. Let's get something done for these people of color in North St. Louis. I don't think you would treat South St. Louis, where you live, the same way. So the approach largely failed because the mayor's office was not structured to manage contracts and invoices at that scale. As a result, to appropriate tornado recovery funds remained stalled at the Board of Aldermen. Programs designed to rebuild North St. Louis existed, but the Cara Spencer administration chose not to use them. The Board of Aldermen should appropriate at least $150 million in RAM settlement funds to define tornado recovery programs, not to a generic recovery account controlled by the mayor's office, but line by line to departments capable of executing the work. 2/3 of the funds should go toward home repair, housing production, and neighborhood transformation, with the rest split among rental assistance, down payment assistance, shelter, and other needs. In conclusion, none of these steps will bring back the year North St. Louis lost, but they can help chart a real path forward. The city has the tools, the funds, and the capacity to rebuild. It just needs the will to use them.